Even though our world is broken, there is hope in the gospel of Jesus Christ. Candid Mike is here to share the gospel through life lessons and heavy-hitting interviews that will leave you inspired. In each episode, you will have the opportunity to make a difference in your personal life and in the lives of those you love. Today's episode has something good for you. Welcome back, listeners. I am Mitchell Lavender, your host, and I'm glad to be with you again. For those of you who are regular listeners, it has been a couple of weeks since I have been able to get this episode up. This is the last episode of our character series. My apologies for the wait. Life has been busy. We have been up and down and all around, and even today I'm sitting here a little bit sick for some reason. The left side of the inside of my throat, right around my tonsil area, is swollen, and I'm not sure why. I went by the doctor today and got checked out, and they're going to get some results back to me pretty soon. But it's been a good couple of weeks. I hope that you guys are doing well. I know that we are looking forward to being done with this series, and today we're talking about conviction. This is the icing on the cake. This is the cherry on top. This is the baking soda, so to speak, of the character series, because character, as we've been talking about, is so important because it's who we are, not reputation, not what people think of us, but who we are when no one's looking, who we are striving to be, even if that's subconsciously or consciously. And conviction is an immovable belief, something that is firm, where people will have a hard time changing it, where you get to talking about a topic and the person with conviction on that topic is not easy to sway. And this is such an important part of character, because this is what people will see. This is the true you when time gets hard. When times get hard, when suffering occurs, the real you comes out. Conviction is what carries you through on who you really want to be. A few people to think about: Polycarp, a gentleman who existed, who lived back in the first century. He was basically persecuted by the Roman proconsul of his time. When he was about 80 years old or so, he stood before the Roman proconsul, and this was in the Colosseum at the time, and he was threatened by the proconsul, threatened with his life, threatened to be either burned alive or torn apart by lions unless he would say that Caesar is Lord. And this man, Polycarp, was a Christian. It is believed that he was a direct disciple of John, who we know as one of the writers of the gospel, John in the Bible. Polycarp did not cave in. He would not say Caesar is Lord. He would not give in to the proconsul's request. And yes, it costed him his life. He was burned alive willingly because he was unwilling to denounce Jesus Christ as his Lord. Talk about conviction. And Jesus himself, obviously, we know from history and also from the Bible that Christ is the perfect example of conviction, the perfect example of an immovable belief, the perfect sacrifice for us. He lost his life on behalf of what he believed and on behalf of what his mission was, to fulfill God's will, to be an atoning sacrifice for all of us. He lost his life. He gave up the most important, most valuable, most precious part of himself because of what he believed in. When you think about conviction, when you think about these examples of conviction, how do these things look in your own life? It's a good question to ask yourself. Polycarp was unwilling to fold in his belief because he loved Jesus. Jesus was unwilling to fold, unwilling to give in, unwilling to sin. He didn't give in to Satan. He didn't give in to the people of his time, the Pharisees, Sadducees. He didn't give in to the requests of the people because he wanted to fulfill God's will. He loved God more than anything else. So when you think about this question for yourself, what do you love most? What are you most attached to? More than likely, that is something that you have conviction about. And this is an important question to explore, because if you don't explore it, it's still going to flow out of you and people are going to see it, and it's going to be the very thing that you pass on to people, whether consciously or subconsciously. Your conviction is a part of who you are, and that is going to bleed through everything that you do. So my challenge to you is this: is your conviction going to make a difference in the lives of others for an eternity. I want to read a passage for you in 1 Corinthians 15. This is Paul. He's talking to the Corinthian church. They have a very interesting relationship. But what he says here in verse 1 on down, I'll read for you. Now I would remind you, brothers, of the gospel I preached to you, which you received, in which you stand, and by which you are being saved, if you hold fast to the word I preached to you, unless you believed in vain. For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the Scriptures. And he goes on to further explain who Christ appeared to and how the resurrection of the dead is true. And my question to you earlier, same now, as the gospel makes an eternal difference, does what you're convicted about in your life make an eternal difference? Sometimes we are convicted about things that really don't matter. But I want to bring you back to what I'm talking about is the gospel. Paul says he's passing it on as first importance, which means it precedes everything else. Why? Because the gospel itself has the power to save me and you if we believe it. What does save mean? It has the power to make you, to move you into a right relationship with God, where there's nothing in between you and God, and you and him can become one. That changes everything. The gospel, the first importance. And thinking about the world today, even when you hear me say this, that the gospel is of first importance, depending on your background, depending on your beliefs, right? Your convictions, this may sound absolutely right, or it may sound absurd. But think about what we typically make of first importance today. And ask yourself this question: do these things make an eternal difference? We typically prioritize our careers, and rightly so. Careers are good to prioritize, but they aren't going to be the thing that makes a difference in our eternity. We do this with money, the same with pleasure, retirement, with the next relationship, our reputation, maybe the next contract, or the next party, or the next big thing. We chase after these things. We make these things of first importance, and these things often are our convictions that we base our life around, rather than the one thing that matters the most, which is the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. Today, as you listen to the world, it will be harder and harder to hear that the gospel of Jesus Christ should be prioritized. There's a couple of things going on. One, the enemy Satan doesn't want us to know this. Two, he's mixed up and scrambled so many different things in this world where we chase after and prioritize the wrong things, and we often find out too late. It's so bad that sometimes we don't even think that we are in a spiritual battle, but we really are. This is one of my convictions, that each of us, all of us, are in a spiritual battle. God himself is fighting for our soul. Satan is fighting to hold on to us and keep us captive. God wants to set us free, and the gospel is how we get set free. And Christ has made himself readily available for each person, but not all of us know this. Okay, so bring it on down then. What does this have to do with your family, your coworkers, and your friends, and your character, and your conviction? Well, this has everything to do with it. If you choose to be a man or a woman who believes in Jesus Christ, and not blindly, studying the Bible and other books and other religions, and coming to the conclusion that Christianity is really, truly the only true way that leads you into a right relationship with God, for a number of reasons. One, Jesus Christ is alive. He came back from the dead. And two, unmerited grace. I mean, it's amazing. Unlike other religions, we have a deity who is willing to give himself up for us and call us into a right relationship with himself at his own expense, which doesn't happen in any other religion. amongst other things. If this is what you choose to believe in and have a conviction about, then you are going to be able to have communion with God Himself, your Creator, and you're going to be able to share this message of truth and love and grace with other people, including your family, friends, and coworkers, right? And this transcends into eternity, because when we pass away as Christians, we know we go to dwell with God. As I was thinking about this week, I want to be open with you guys. My wife and I we've been having a week full of really challenging conversations that have exposed different areas where both of us need to grow as a husband and as a wife and as friends even, and as brother and sister in Christ. And as the man of the home and as men of our home, we are responsible for leading our families spiritually. Yesterday was Father's Day, and happy Father's Day to the fathers there. I'm not a father yet. I look forward to being one day. Those of you who are, you are awesome, and you are already influencing your children. And the question is, what are we passing on to our families with conviction? Because we're passing on something. Is it football? Is it perfection with academics? Is it having money? Is it a deep love for God? What are we passing on with conviction? Because the immovable beliefs that we have are the ones that we're going to pass on. And these are the things we're going to show our friends, our families, and our coworkers. What are we going to be remembered for? This is a question I want you to ponder right now. If you were to leave today, not necessarily death, but if you had to go and you couldn't speak to your family, your friends, or your coworkers anymore, what would they remember about you? What would they say in regards to their memories of you? What would stick out to them? What would be the words and the sentences that they use to capture you as an individual? Would they talk about how passionate you were about politics, or about, you name it, cooking or baseball or basketball or football or billiards or maybe auto mechanics or maybe IT or maybe nursing or being a doctor or a lawyer? Or what would they talk about? Because your passion and how you're remembered is directly connected to what you have conviction about. Remember, conviction is an immovable belief, something that people can't just come up to you and change. And I think it's wise to be open to different viewpoints. That's one thing I want to add into this as well. What I'm not saying is to have this immovable belief in the sense of where you're stubborn and unwilling to think, but to have an immovable belief based on study, merit, logic, evidence that says, unless I'm proved otherwise with logical evidence, other studied ideas, then I am not going to change what I think about this particular subject because it matters. So when you think of it that way, what will people remember you for? This is what you're showing your family, your friends, and your coworkers already. Your conviction. Go back to the example of Polycarp. Go back to the example of Jesus. Go back in history and look at men and women who changed history, who made a difference because they were unwilling to be shaken on a particular area of belief. This is what we're talking about as a part of character. This is what we have to pass on to those who are around us, our friends, family, and our coworkers. Today, we live in a society, in the United States at least, where truth is relative and conviction is seen as a bad thing. Conviction can be seen as being closed-minded or unwilling to think. I'm not talking about being closed-minded, and I'm also not talking about being unwilling to think. I am a Christian. I do believe that Jesus Christ is Lord of heaven and earth, and that the gospel is what saves people, and that people who do not know Christ will still be judged by God and are subject to His judgment, which is the best person who could judge you because He loves you more than anyone else and knows all about you. However, without Christ, I do not believe that people will make it. I do believe with conviction that Christianity is the only way, because I've thought about it, because I've studied it, because I am still studying it and other religions, and I'm open-minded. I don't think that truth should be guarded in fear. I think truth should be explored and proven right. And as far as my studies in Christianity have gone, it's proven right every time. So some food for thought. I'm not saying be convicted in the sense of being closed-minded or stubborn. I'm saying have conviction about things that matter for eternity, especially the gospel of Jesus Christ, but realize that you have conviction about something already, and that is what you're passing on to your family, your friends, and your coworkers. Make sure you pass on the right thing. Make sure you think about this, that you pass on something that is going to last and bring them into eternity the right way with God, because this matters. At the end of the day, at the end of a life, what matters most? Two things: our relationship with God and our relationship with our family. Make sure that you, who've listened to this character series all the way through, don't miss the forest for the trees. The gospel of Jesus Christ and following Christ is the most important thing you can do with your life. I call you to have conviction about your life, about your character, and to look deeply into Christianity to find the truth for yourself. This character series has covered the following things: integrity, discipline, handling conflict. We talked about love being the key to your legacy, vulnerable communication, forgiveness, celebrating, patience, kindness, handling burdens, being a teammate, listening, following up, and initiating. And our last episode we just heard is about conviction. So thank you so much for listening and tuning in. It's been exciting to share this with you guys and to journey on this character series with you. This is my first time doing a series like this via podcast. I hope it's been helpful. I know that it's not perfect. I know that sometimes my voice is too low and sometimes I don't enunciate properly. I am working hard on that, and I appreciate any feedback you guys have. In our Ministry Toolbox series, which is going to begin on July 3rd, okay, that's Wednesday. It's going to drop at 8 a.m. We're going to cover lots of things, but we're going to start off with Ministry Foundation, balancing friendships, okay? We're going to be looking at Acts 6:4, John 13:34 through 35, and Colossians 1:28 and 29. The whole point of this Ministry Toolbox is to give you equipment so that you can be a more effective minister and servant. Okay, so if you lead a ministry, if you are a teammate in any field, at home, even if you have a family, if you are a roommate, these practicals, these biblical truths, these principles are going to be able to help you be a more effective minister. Thanks again for listening. Hope you guys have a great week. I look forward to catching you on July 3rd. Keep your ear out for the Ministry Toolbox. Thank you for listening to Candid Mike, where we share life and ministry principles to inspire transformation and ministry development. Each episode is a joy for us to record, and we are so thankful that you tune in to listen to us. A big thanks to Steezy Prime for our show music, which you can find more of his music on SoundCloud at Steezy Prime. Please stay tuned for our next episode and follow us on Instagram at Candid Mike Podcast.